I'm going to skip over this slide. I believe I talked most about the bonus options. This again is just talking about our allocation lineup. I don't think I need to touch on the index allocations anymore, as I can send you that information. And of course I can follow if you guys have any questions. If you're working with our product, I can go into more details on those. I want to spend a little time on our, on our index lock. Now, this is really in this IUL space. If any of you sell other carriers and you work with their indexed UL, this really makes our IUL unique in the market, as no other carrier can offer this type of feature, as we actually do. It's really cool about Allianz is we actually do own our own investment bank. We do our own hedging. Most insurance carriers out there, I mean, all of them really, use an investment bank to purchase their options and hedge when you're talking about the different index options that they offer. And so that's why a lot of times if you've worked with IULs, you're familiar with the term sweep dates, or maybe it might be an anniversary of like the 1st and the 15th. Well, we actually do our own hedging on a daily basis. We actually, because we're a German company, but we have our North American branch here in Golden Valley in Minnesota. We actually hedge for Germany as well. So we are trading billions of dollars a day. Why that matters is because we're not having to go to an investment bank to hedge, and that every time you do that, there's like a transaction cost. We don't incur that cost, so we can put it back in the product. So we and offer more competitive par and cap rates, but then also have a feature like the index lock. So like I was mentioning before on crediting methods, where it's an annual point to point where you're looking at one index value and comparing it a year later. The cool thing about the index lock is anytime throughout the year, if that index has a nice return, you can lock in that rate, so the client gets that rate come their anniversary. So we know you as an advisor and clients aren't going to be tracking these insurance policies on a daily basis. Most clients who have life insurance probably don't even look at their policy that often. Hopefully they look at their annual statement, if that. But what's cool about the index lock is you can track and view it online anytime. You can lock in online at any time, or you can even set up like an auto lock feature. So you can put a rate of return in there, and if the index ever gets to that return, it'll automatically lock in for your client, and then the client will get that credit on their anniversary. So I'm going to show you an example here. So this would be if your client got into the index, it starts out at 100 at the beginning of the year. Throughout the year, it has some volatility, as you can see on the graph here, the blue line. It goes down and up a little bit there. About the end of the third quarter, your client decides, okay, I'm sitting at 8% here. I'm going to lock that in to guarantee my policy gets credited at 8%. So the client, at the end of the year, if they wouldn't have done anything, the index would have been valued at 102, which would have been a 2% return. Because they locked in, they're going to get 8%, not 2%. Even the money that wasn't, if they're paying on a monthly basis, that money would still get credited to 8%, even though it hadn't been in the policy, because we look at plan premium. So whatever the plan premium is what's going to get that credit. Now, that prevents, like, if a client has a really nice size return, like, 20, 25, 10, 15, whatever that is, the client can't just put in just a bunch of money to get that return. That would be considered unplanned premium, and that money would go into a fixed account. In this example, you can see in year 2, the index value will start at whatever it ended at, not what it was locked in at. So again, in year 2, it starts at 102. And then this time, in this example, the client, we're looking at that orange line now, it locks in again at 108. So it's a 6% return. If they would have waited, it would have finished at 112, which would have been a 10% return, but they're going to get the 6. They're not going to get the 10. So it can work both ways. If you lock in too early and that index continues to climb up, you're still going to be at the lockable rate at whatever you locked in at. And there's 2 ways to initiate an index lock. You'll see when the client logs in, you're going to be able to see what the rate is at. So it'll calculate any par and bonuses into it, and you can either do a manual or an auto lock. So this is what a screenshot of the website's going to look like. You're going to see the actual index interest rate, and then you'll see you can either on manual lock requested, where you just basically check mark a box that will lock in the rate that day, or you can set a target. Now, how the target works is basically you can see that this client that's sitting at 7.77, if the client decides to put a 12% and a 7% on the lower, if the policy ever gets above 12%, then we'll automatically lock in that rate for the client. So they don't have to track it. They don't even have to know. They just know that they're going to get 12% if it ever reaches to that level. Now, same with the lower target. If this client's sitting at 7.7, they set a lower target at 7. If that index ever falls below 7, that'll initiate a lock as well. And we always look at the ending day's values. So whatever, it'll trigger that lock if the ending day values is either above 12 here in this example or below 7. And we make it easy for you advisors to run reports. So if you have a lot of business on the books with us, you can run a report that basically puts all your clients on a page or two. Everyone that's in the lockable index options that we have shows you what they can currently be locked in at, so it's easy to manage for you. This is available right through our website. And then you can also narrow down that report. So let's say you wanted to do only clients that are above 8% currently. It'll show any clients that are above 8% within that specific index. So and this just kind of another example of the benefits of an auto lock, setting that upper target and a lower target. And so guaranteeing that the client, like in this example, is going to get at least 6 because they have a lower target. When it's, in year 1 month 8, it's sitting at around 6.5. And then the upper target is set at 7. So if it ever got before 7, it would just lock in at 7. It is important to note too, once the targets are in the system, they do automatically renew. So your client doesn't have to set a new target every year. If they're whatever they're set at, they'll continue. And you can always go in online and change the lock. So if before it's locked, if you want to change the percentage up or down, you can do that at any time. And then this also is just, I always tell advisors that the client doesn't even have to use this feature. There's no cost to it. It's just basically a feature of our product that if they want to lock in a rate, they can certainly do so. And then it is important to remember too that the lock is just for the year. So once they're locked in, they are locked in for the year, and then on their anniversary each year, that'll unlock. And you may have multiple locks because we have 4 different index options that are available to lock. So each one of those is going to be separate where you can lock in their return. So this is just a hypothetical example of Mark and Rose are setting a target. They own an IUL. They meet with their advisor. They decide that the current index is at 6%. They decide that they're going to set their upper at 10%, lower at 4. And they can be either up or down as long as that lock hasn't been activated. So you can see the upper is at 10, end of day it ends at 10:05. That's when the auto lock would initiate. So the client would basically get locked in at 10.05%. We send out a confirmation letter confirming it's been locked. This is what the percentage they can assume that they're going to get on their anniversary when the credit happens. And then when you're setting an upper target, the request must be greater than the current index, of course. And then this just shows you the lower two. So again, this is at 8. They put it at 4. Remember, at the end of the day, it finished at 3.95, which is below the 4%. So then we'll lock it in at 3.95% for them. Our average lock since we introduced this a couple years back has been around 9.5%, which if you haven't sold a lot of IULs, typically when you're selling these, you're running around a 6%, average rate. So that's been the average lock. And then earlier this year, when there was the tariff announcements back in April, there was a lot of volatility in the market. I've seen a couple cases where clients have been locking in over 20%. So, which is awesome, right? That's a really nice return. Good story for advisors, and to just show that the power of the lock option. Any questions on the lock? I want to make sure you guys understand that it is a pretty key feature of our product.
I'm not seeing any questions right now.
Perfect. Okay. All right. And then often when you sell our product or in running illustrations, we're often showing income. Again, when we're looking at a cash value life product, the accumulation is important. So we're showing you can take out loans or withdrawals. We have two different loan options that you can take, either fixed loans or index loans. So fixed loans, that money, the cash value that they take out is basically taken out of the index option they're in, and then we're charging them the rate, either 2.9% if it's in the first 10 years or 1.96 if it's years 11 plus. We do credit 2% back into the accumulation value. So it like after year 11, it's like a wash loan, but you will see the loan balance go increase, because that 2% is going into the accumulation value, not as a loan repayment. And then our index loans are currently at 5% is the charge rate there. So these rates are guaranteed for the life of the policy. They're not going to go up or down. The key there is on the index, that money is still participating. So even though they're accessing their money, that money is still working for them in the index option that they're in. So hopefully that index can outperform 5%, and then they're getting a positive arbitrage there where they're actually getting more credited back into their policy than we're charging for interest on the money that they've received. We have a lot of flexibility as far as like fixed and index. So let's say a client started out at a fixed loan, they're not making any repayments, and they wish that money was participating for them, they can move that loan balance over to an index loan on their anniversary date. Or you can have 50% fixed loans, 50% index. The money that is in the index, you can have in different allocation options. So if you want that strategy to be different on the loan money, that's an option as well. And the interest bonus applies still on those loans as well. And I just talked about the blending and the diversification where you can have it put in different allocation options. We do also have withdrawals. That's just a partial surrender. So what that's going to do is reduce the death benefit dollar for dollar, and then as well as the death benefit and the cash value. The thing about withdrawals is you want to make sure you know what the client's cost basis is there as far as what they've put in, because if they're taking more money back out than they've put in, that can trigger a taxable event.